is Sarah, and I'm officially back! So I survived all of the craziness that happened in the months of February and March, from baby showers and bridal showers to Easter pageants and moving and the like, and I am officially back to BookTube, and I am so excited. For those of you who asked and like said encouragement and stuff about the move, thank you so much. Everything went really smoothly. I really didn't do that much at all because I was doing stuff with my Easter pageant and everything, and so one Saturday, like, my friends just moved pretty much all of my stuff, which was wonderful and fantastic, and so the bookshelves have gone up. Obviously, I will have a bookshelf tour coming probably sometime maybe in the next couple of months. I'm obviously super behind on creating videos. I have a ton of books to wrap up and review and all of this stuff, but we'll get to all that. I'm also still figuring out the lighting situation in this new house, so bear with me as we get that all sorted out over the next several videos. So we're gonna pretend like this video was filmed and uploaded in the month of March, not actually in the month of April, because today I am jumping in with the monthly recommendations group that was started by Trina from Between Chapters and Kayla Rain. For the month of March, we are talking standalones. I'm already really bad at narrowing these kinds of things down, as you guys know, but today I have 25 books to share with you, and I know that probably sounds like a crap ton, and it is, but my original list was like somewhere in the 40s or 50s, so this is actually narrowed down. To make this a little bit easier, I've divided these up into genre categories, so if there's a particular genre that you really like, I have all of the timestamps for the different genres listed below, so just click one of those and jump to the stories that you might want to hear about. So without further ado, let us jump into the 25 books that I have to share with you. We are going to kick things off with some nonfiction recommendations. The first one being Bread and Wine by Shauna Niequist. This is Shauna's third book and was actually the first book of hers that I read, but it is my favorite thus far. It is all about food and community. Shauna is a huge believer in life around the table, about eating and sharing your life with the people that are in it, and so this is just a collection of essays about things that have happened in her life and lessons that she's learned that relate to food and community, and it's just a really sweet, fantastic read, and if you are a big like food community person, then I highly recommend you check this one out. Up next we have If You Find This Letter by Hannah Brencher. If You Find This Letter is Hannah's memoir about her life in New York City post-grad, how she started dropping love letters around New York City and how that evolved into the organization that More Love Letters is today. It's a really fantastic read. Hannah is just so relatable and so wonderful, so I highly recommend you check this one out. Up next we have Love Does by Bob Goff. It's a collection of stories from his life about putting love into action and about showing tangible love to people in different ways and not letting love just be a thing that is a thing, but an actual tangible thing that people know beyond a shadow of a doubt because of the way you treat them that you love them. It's really quick, really fun read, and Bob is just hilarious. Up next we have The Defining Decade by Dr. Meg J. I got rid of the dust jacket for this years ago. Please don't judge me, but I was in this phase where I was like, dust jackets are evil and I don't want any of them ever. But anyway, so this is a sort of psychology-ish book about the decade of your 20s and about how your brain evolves in your 20s, and she goes through things like career and relationships and all sorts of stuff. And it's just a really fascinating read for anyone who is or is about to be in their 20s, about all of the different changes that your body and your brain goes through in that decade and how the choices that you make affect your life in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. And finally we have Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. Super short book. It's really little. There's like, you know, pages with like one quote and stuff like that, so it's a really fast read. I think I read it in maybe 30 minutes on a metro ride or something like that, but it is just all about creativity, and it's about these various lessons that Austin has learned about being an artist and about pulling inspiration from other people and using that to create. So if you are a writer or a creative in any way, I highly recommend you check this one out. So those are the nonfiction recommendations. Now we are jumping into a few classics. The first one should come as no surprise, and that is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is probably my favorite book of all time, without a doubt, in my top 5. I reread it in January for the first time in a few years, and it's a wonderful read. Lizzie and Darcy are classic characters. Austen's commentary on people and social interaction and first impressions and stuff is so witty and hilarious and fun, and you just need to read this book. The other Austen book that I have to recommend to you is Persuasion. This and Northanger Abbey tend to get forgot sometimes, but it's a great, fantastic story. It's a little bit different than a lot of her other books because the protagonist is older, and it's delightful, and you should go read it. And my final classics recommendation for you is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. It is a classic story for a reason. Jane is such a fun, relatable character. It's also written in first person, so it's a little bit easier to jump into than a lot of other classic literature that gives you a ton of setup and background and things like that, and just, yeah, go read this one. Next, I have a couple of more middle grade children's book recommendations for you. The first one being The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. This is one of my absolute favorite books from childhood. It is about a little kid named Milo who doesn't really do or think about much of anything, and then one day he comes home from school to find a toll booth sitting in his house. He then puts the toll booth together, drives through it in his car, and finds himself transported to a magical land where he has to go on an adventure to bring back the princesses of Rhyme and Reason. It is hilarious and witty, and Norton Juster has so much fun playing with language in this book, and it's just wonderful. If you have kids, I'm sure they would absolutely love this, but even as an adult, this is still one of my favorite books. My other middle grade children's recommendation for you is The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. This is a mystery-ish book about 16 seemingly unrelated people who all one day get called to the reading of the will of a recently deceased sort of eccentric millionaire, and at this will reading, they learn one of them will inherit his vast fortune and one of them is also probably a murderer. And it's just a really, really fun, fascinating read. It's pretty short. It's only a couple hundred pages, I think, if that. I vaguely remember how this book ends, but I haven't read it in a really long time, and so it's just really, really fun. You should read it. Up next, I have 4 fantasy, sci-fi, myth, retelling-ish type stories for you. The first one is Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. This is one of my absolute favorite C.S. Lewis books. It's definitely in my top 5 books of all time. It might actually be my favorite book. I can never decide if I love this one or Pride and Prejudice more, but it's fantastic. It is a retelling of the myth of Cupid and Psyche, and it is just an incredible, incredible book. If you love myths and retellings, and especially if you are a fan of Cupid and Psyche, and if you are a Lewis fan and have not read this book, just go read it right now. Up next, Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This was my first read of 2016. I absolutely adored it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It is a post-apocalyptic, like, dystopian adult novel, but it's like also a literary fiction novel, and it's just an amazing read, and I did a full video review on this where I gushed a lot about it, and so just go watch that if you want to hear more of my thoughts about it, but you should read this one. Up next, The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. This is a magical realism book about a girl named Ava Wilhelmina Lavender who is normal in every single way except she is born with wings, and it is really just the story about her life of growing up as a person with wings, and it's just a beautiful, super weird, but very lyrical, wonderful story to read. This was one of my favorite reads of 2015, and I did a full video review on this one as well, which I will link in the description below and in the card symbol above, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts, you can go watch that. My final fantasy-ish recommendation for you is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. It's incredible. It is a story about 2 dueling magicians, and this night circus that just sort of pops up without warning is like the venue for their battle, and it's just beautiful and wonderful, and the writing is magical and mystical, and I loved the characters and I love the story, and I will be doing a full video review on this. This is one of the many books that I have not had time to film reviews for over the last couple months, but it is fantastic. Yeah, go read this one. Up next, I have 5 literary fiction recommendations for you. The first one being The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. It won the Pulitzer Prize in 2014, and for very good reason. It is about a kid named Theo Decker who one day is involved in an accident that kills his mother, and then his father abandons him, and so he is taken in by a wealthy friend, and it's really just about his life and about how the events of that one particular day where his mother died affect the rest of his life. I don't want to say much else other than that because I went into it really not knowing like anything about it, and I loved experiencing the story and watching it unfold from there. So highly, highly recommend you check this one out. It's a chunker, but it's worth it. Up next, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. This is about a little kid named Oscar whose father is killed in the terrorist attacks of September 11th. And it's really just about a journey that he goes on after that to sort of find his father and find closure about this thing. And it's just a really beautiful story. It's one of those books that as I was reading it, I really wasn't sure if I was enjoying it. But then when I finished it, I was like, it's just a beautiful, beautiful story. It's beautifully written, wonderful, so heartwarming. Oscar is such a sweet character, and I love everything about this book, and I will definitely be rereading it soon. Up next, Gilead by Marilynne Robinson. This is another Pulitzer Prize winner. I believe it won in 2004, and this is a first-person account written by a pastor, and it's basically he did not marry until later in life, and so he has like a 6 or 7-year-old son, but he is like in his 60s or 70s, and he is dying, and so he basically writes a letter to his son and shares with him all of the things that his son would learn from him were he to live his entire life raising his son. And so it's a really beautiful, also heartbreaking at points story. It is really fascinating commentary on sort of life and human interaction and theology, and it's just a beautifully, beautifully written story that I would really recommend to like anybody. Marilynne Robinson's writing is just absolutely exquisite, so just for writing quality alone, you should check this one out. Up next, The Little Paris Bookshop by Nina George. So this is the story of a man named Monsieur Jean Perdu, who is a literary pharmacist. He runs a bookshop barge on the River Seine called the Literary Apothecary, and he says that you can come to him and he will prescribe you a book for whatever ails you. One day, a particular event happens that sort of sets him off on this journey, and he goes down the River Seine and processes life and loss and love, and it's just a beautifully written story, really, really fun read. And I did a full video review on this, which I will link in all of the places above and below if you want to hear more of my thoughts. My final literary fiction recommendation for you guys is Peace Like a River by Leif Enger. This was my favorite book of 2015. It is beautiful and rich and exquisite and wonderful. It is about an asthmatic little boy named Ruben, and one day his brother is accused of murder and goes on the run, and so Ruben and his father and his older sister go across the country to find his older brother and bring him back, and along the way learn so many wonderful things about life and miracles and family and relationships. It's just an absolutely exquisite story, and I need to reread it so I can do a full video review for you guys because it's incredible. Just go read this one, please, because I need other people to talk to about this story. Finally, I have 6 historical fiction books to recommend to you. First up is The Last Sin Eater by Francine Rivers. This is a Christian historical fiction novel about a girl who sort of comes into this community, and there is this concept of a sin eater, which is a person who, when someone died, would come and eat the sins of that person so that that person could go to heaven. And this girl learns about this tradition and is sort of weirded out by it and goes to find the man who is the sin eater, and it's just a really, really beautiful, lovely story. Francine Rivers is my favorite Christian fiction author. I love everything that she writes, as evidenced by my shelf of all of her books, basically, but this is one of my favorite standalones from her. It's just a lovely, lovely story. Up next, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I didn't actually read this one until I think it was 2012 or 2013, but I loved this book. Character development, the writing, the story itself, it's all just wonderful. So if you are like I was until just a few years ago and have not yet experienced the beauty that is To Kill a Mockingbird, you definitely need to check this one out soon. Up next, A Separate Peace by John Knowles. So this is a World War II historical fiction novel that takes place in New England at a boys' boarding school, and it's primarily about 2 boys and some of the things that happen between the 2 of them one summer, and it's a really fascinating, also heartbreaking but beautifully written coming-of-age story. It's very reminiscent in its feel of the movie Dead Poets Society starring Robin Williams, but it's just a beautifully written story. It was heartbreaking but also really lovely, and a really, really fascinating story to read. Up next, Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. This is obviously another extremely well-known, well-loved classic winner of the Pulitzer Prize, made into that wonderful movie with Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh, and is just a fantastic story. It is a chunker, obviously. It's like close to 1,000 pages, and there are definitely parts of this that are really hard to get through, but I love this book. It is beautifully written, it is a classic for a reason, and you get so much more depth of character and things like that, and it's such a well-crafted, fascinating story, and if you are a fan of the movie but haven't read the book, you definitely should check this one out. Up next, All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This won the Pulitzer Prize last year in 2015 and is a World War II fiction novel that follows 2 different characters, a blind girl named Marie Leray who lives in France and a young German Nazi soldier named Werner, and about their different lives and how they came to be where they were in the war and how their paths cross, and it's a beautifully written story. I love everything about it. Obviously, I'm a big fan of historical fiction books that won the Pulitzer Prize because there's a few of them on this list. And my final recommendation for you guys today is The Flames of Rome by Paul L. Meyer. It is a Christian historical fiction novel about a man named Flavius T. Sabinus, who is the city prefect in Rome under Nero, and so he's basically like the mayor of the city, which is effectively the second in command during that time and culture. The Flames of Rome, as you might guess, is in reference to the burning of Rome that happened that was then blamed on the Christians and all this stuff, and so it's a really fascinating read because as Sabinus is growing in his political influence, his mother-in-law becomes a believer, and so he is sort of caught in the middle of this really tense situation where his mother-in-law is this person that Nero completely hates, but he is second in command to Nero, and it's wonderful. It is so historically accurate, which means that it is kind of disturbing at points because a lot of the things they did in Rome were not really cool at all, and it's a really, really incredible, fascinating read. And I finally have my hands on a copy of it again, so I will be rereading this later this year, and I'm sure then doing a full video review as well. Well, there you have it, friends. Those are my 25 standalone recommendations. If you have read any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know in the description below. Like I said, if you have questions about any of them that I did not answer in my hopefully brief synopses of all of these books, please let me know in the comments and I will be more than happy to answer any of those questions. And once again, I'm so excited to be back, so please also let me know how you guys are doing because I've missed you so much. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe and I will see you next time. Bye! First up is the last blah, really fantastic life in your 20s and in your 30s, this is a magical realism book about a girl named blah. This is who is the city he's sci-fi